Welcome, a very warm welcome to the programme. In the next 30 years, the number of over 60s in this world of ours is expected to double. The global population is ageing. Are we ready? This is Roundtable. Hello from me, David Foster. They say that age is just a number, but when entire societies are getting older, it sort of throws up all kinds of challenges and, yes, opportunities too. By 2050, the best guess is that there will be 2 billion people over the age of 60. For the latest in our 2020 Vision series, looking to the world of the near future, we're talking about our aging population.
The world is getting older, and by 2050, the number of people over the age of 60 will more than double, from 900 million in 2015 to nearly 2.1 billion in 2050. The UN calls it one of the most significant social transformations of the 21st century, affecting nearly all sectors of society, like work, healthcare, housing, transport, and social care, to name just a few. Population is determined by births and deaths, but migration to a country is also a contributing factor. Japan, Italy, and Germany are top of the list of the world's oldest countries, based on how much of the population is 65 and older. But some experts argue that age is more than just a number, and say we need to look at people's physical and mental abilities to better measure aging populations. So if we are living longer, what are the best ways to plan for our future? And are we equipped to cope with an aging population?
I'm very pleased to say that joining me at the round table we have Brenton, who helped set up the first co-housing project for those 50 and above in the UK. Orlu with us, specialises in age-related medicine design at University College London. We cross to Vienna, where we welcome Sergei Scherbov, who heads an international team looking into global population ageing. And in Maine, on the east coast of the USA, Isele, who founded a company that gets older people back into the workforce. Great to have you all on here. Sergei, let me start with you first of all. Sore knees, dodgy hips, false teeth, financial burden, a common perception of the world's ageing population. And yet you say in Prospective Longevity, your book, ageing could be good news for the economy and beyond. Dispel the myths, please.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that everything depends how we define who is old and what is aging. Because United Nations, up to at least 2017 revision of its population forecasts and estimates, assumed that people are old at age 60. And that's what you mentioned at the beginning, that population of older people above age 60 would double by 2050 and in fact would even triple by 2100. It is if we consider people old at age 60. But people are not old at age 60, at least not in all parts of the world. Unfortunately, what we are doing now, we are always having this old age threshold fixed. And we look at people 100 years ago at age 60, they are old. 100 years ahead at age 60, they are old. But during these 200 years, people are completely different. And today, the person at age 60 is very, very different from the person at age 60, say, 50 years ago.
So what do you mean when you say an ageing population is good for the economy and beyond that?
I'm just saying that people are at age 60, at age 65, at age 70, and even older, at older ages, they're very productive. Their cognitive skills are very good. Their physical conditions are very good. They're healthy, much healthier than they used to be, say, 50 years ago. So we should not look at these people, being different than they were, say, I don't know, when they were 20 years younger. They have a lot of experience, and in many cases, they are much more productive.
And Elizabeth, this is one thing that you're putting to good use, isn't it? Getting 50-plus people to go into their own businesses, setting them up as entrepreneurs, or at least showing them how to do it. And you reckon, what is it you said, we don't have to cope with this challenge, an ageing population will have a positive impact?
Absolutely. It's people always look at me when I talk about senior entrepreneurship and they think it's an oxymoron. I say it's not an oxymoron. It is really a tremendous opportunity. And the aging demographic worldwide is one of the largest untapped resources when we think of the experience embedded in that generation, that experience that can be used to help young people start businesses, or experience that could be used in the workforce instead of pushing people into retirement when they really don't want to retire and they're still, as Sergei said, highly productive. This is not rocket science. In many ways, it's just common sense that we need to look at this population as an opportunity and stop shaming them. And as you said in the beginning, it's shaming this group because of their age and totally overlooking the opportunity embedded in their
it's been referred to as age shame, hasn't it? And what do you reckon? You've said before, you said, I think there's no better time to be getting old.
Yeah, absolutely. The in terms of what people can do and in terms of the technology to help people over 50 live their lives more fully, and more importantly, live their lives better connected to their communities, to the world at large. It's a phenomenal time to be old. Speaking from personal experience as well.
Well, that's great news, isn't it, for most of us at this table? Maria, you can say how old you are, but you are older than your mother was when she died. And you are still working.
Yes.
You've set up this Cohousing UK project.
Yes.
What would you be like if you weren't involved in something like this as you got older?
Bored. I think bored. But I'm absolutely on the same page as Sergei and Elizabeth. I think old age is a very positive time. I think there's a culture lag, actually, particularly in UK society, where there's a dominant mindset that sees older people as poor things. If you look at that sign that has people crossing the road, shows older people crossing the road. Bent over, some old lady with a stick, being helped to the other side by a man because she can't get there on her own. It's ridiculous. A Dutch friend of mine said 40 years ago, is that how you portray older people? But we haven't changed it. It reminds me of my grandmother.
One as I go into my village.
Hey?
There's one as I go into my village.
My grandmother took herself into a home aged 68 because her mindset, as was like very much society's is still, I'm a poor thing, I need looking after.
Well, you'll tell us about co-housing as we go on, but let's mention this report. Now, we'll get to the medicine in just a moment, Mina, if we may. There's a report called United for All Ages, in which it says, it only came out just very recently, Together in the 2020s it's called, Britain is one of the most age-segregated countries in the world.
I think it is.
Well, that's just what you've been referring to, isn't it?
Deeply patronising and paternalistic. All our institutions are. And I think older people, like me, are rejecting those. And the mores haven't caught up.
The what haven't?
The mores, the sort of values of society, just haven't caught up with how ageing is. 70's the new 50.
Well, some people say we shouldn't be using phrases like that, and I'll get to that a little bit later on.
It expresses something.
Okay, but Mina, tell me about the way that medicine will have to adapt to the ageing population, as described by Sergei, as I mentioned in our introduction. I mean, simple things, like you've got to make pills that are perhaps easier to swallow.
Indeed, this is such an important field. And before I share my opinion about, the medicines and medicine needs for aging population, I would like to emphasize that I can't agree with everyone today that we should celebrate aging. This is something positive. We are living longer. We are expecting to spend, longer time with our grandchildren, and we would like to enjoy, all the things in life for a longer time. Aging is inevitable, and medicine use is quite inevitable in the later stage of the life. So our aim should be really enabling people to have the ownership of their disease as well. And how it happens, if people can cope with some difficulties, some chronic illness difficulties, for instance, by taking their medicine at their own home setting, that would really, really help them. When it comes to medicine design, for instance, we try to take, a quite pragmatic approach, and we try to change the design of the medicine. If people are trying to take many medicines and they have some visual impairment, for instance, or they have some swallowing difficulties, it may make a big deal on a daily basis. So we are trying to redesign the medicine according to the needs of older people.
I want to read something that came from Britain's Chief Medical Officer today. He's fairly new, called Chris Whitty. He says the NHS, National Health Service, publicly funded health service in this country, risks being overwhelmed by an old age health crisis. We've underappreciated how much in the future this is going to be an issue. It's predictable, it's solvable, provided we take a long run at it. How do we solve that?
Partly through housing. I mean, so many older people in this country are in housing that is really unsuitable for their needs in terms of keeping them warm, in terms of barrier-free access to their homes, etc. And we have not modernised the housing stock with a view to old age.
But I want to ask, this is quite a contentious point. Let's throw this out to everybody here. In doing so, you are spending quite a lot of money in looking after the elderly populations in hospital and making the advances that you suggest we have to make. We are spending quite a lot of money. Are we not indulging people in old age at the expense of those who are coming up through their youth and seeing the money being spent on things that doesn't necessarily benefit them? Sergei first.
Well, first of all, we should not forget that people becoming old at much older age. They're not becoming old at age 60. With every year, they are becoming old at older age. So it doesn't mean that, this bulk of people, this silver tsunami is coming. No, the number of people, even though we have this, post-war waves of the generation, pretty big one, still we have people becoming older at much older age. So it's not really tsunami. It all depends how you look at that. So people are healthier. At the same age, people are healthier. So, of course, at very old age people, yes, we need to have environment.
But because the proportion of people who are healthy at an old age may increase, but equally the number of people who are old will also increase. So let me come to you, Elizabeth, and ask about your 50-plus initiative, getting people into second careers, third careers, maybe even fourth careers as entrepreneurs. Do you think they're better equipped, perhaps, than younger people at that age to do something like that?
They're better equipped in many ways in terms of their life work experience. And I think the best example is to do intergenerational startups where you have the older people with their life work experience working with the younger people with their social media technology experience. And it's not just an opinion. The data has shown that people over 50 are starting more businesses than any other demographic around the world. And those people over 50 starting a business, that business is still in business 5 years out. 70% of them are still in business versus 27% of new business startups started by just young people. And to come back to your earlier remark, I think we are not indulging older people. I think we are shortchanging them in terms of what they can contribute. And the whole question of work and entrepreneurship is not just economic. It's because we have to continue to connect the dots in society, because it's also been demonstrated that seniors that work longer have a feeling of relevance and their opinion and contributions are valued, stay healthy longer. So they're actually creating less of a drain on any healthcare system.
Maria, you were nodding in agreement to some of that.
Absolutely. Your earlier point about the old costing a lot. I mean, older people who are continuing to work are taxpayers. They're paying into the economy. In this country, 70% of older people are homeowners. They have billions of unmortgaged equity in their homes. They could all tap it quite easily and create housing for families if there were a reasonable and desirable alternative constructed for them.
And perhaps pay more taxes because their healthcare is going to cost more money. Reasonable or not?
Yes, why not?
Okay, tell us about your project, because it's for the it's 50 plus, isn't it?
Yes, 50 plus, like Elizabeth.
With the way we're talking about this, that almost sounds like a youth club.
It is 50 plus. It's a senior co-housing community. It's the only one that so far exists in the UK. And its age range is 36 years, 54 to 90. And Elizabeth, the 90-year-old, is still working.
Wonderful.
The ones in their 50s still are working in employment. It's a dream that we put together a long time ago, and it took us 2 decades to achieve it in this country.
Because it came as an idea from the
Holland,
Netherlands,
yeah, from
where
Holland.
they take these, have done for some time, take these things very seriously.
Yeah.
And yet you have only managed to set one up in 30 years. What does that say about our society?
20 years, 20 years. But what it says about our society is that we have very, very rigid, compartmentalized bureaucratic systems in local authorities, in planning. Our local authority resisted us going and buying a site in their area because they didn't want old people there. There's a huge amount of ageism around. Older people are seen as a problem. And what we're demonstrating is that we want to take our lives in our own hands, self-manage, run our own housing complex, don't need people telling us what to do. Our motto is, we shall not be done unto.
But these are just like retirement villages by another name, are they?
They're not a retirement village by any means.
because
but
you say they're all
some of them are still working.
working.
Yeah, yes. And I mean, they're not what the stereotype would make you expect. I find it difficult to find anyone in. They're all out most of the time doing something. They're very active in their local communities.
Yeah, because medicine has come such a long way, hasn't it?
Indeed, indeed, because I think the critical factor is harmonizing the definition, what is needed actually for the aging population. And we believe that the need is independence. And independence is only possible by connection. I fully agree with your comments, communication, and actually really bringing everyone, to the discussion from the very beginning. Because I think aging population is a solution. We have so much to learn from aging population. As researchers, if we work together from the very start by engaging them in real means, I think the future is very bright.
Let's go to this thing about not just working in your older age, but starting to learn again, or to learn more. We know about the University of the Third Age, started in France in the 70s, big in the United Kingdom, all sorts of different things offered in that way. But did you know that China, which now has an elderly population of 24%, guess how many universities there are for the over 60s? Anybody like to throw a number out there? How many universities?
Hundreds?
More than that. Many, many more than that.
Thousands.
Yep. Sergei, want to hazard a guess?
Well, a couple thousand.
Somewhere between
it's closer to 10,000.
somewhere between 60 and 70,000 universities for the over 60s, which is quite extraordinary, but also demonstrates that everybody wants to keep on learning. And if you keep on learning, you stay younger.
Indeed, indeed. It's all about the communication and keeping active, keeping engaged with the community. And I think researchers play a key role by bringing people into the same room and making these discussions and making the solutions together.
Okay, so everybody around this roundtable program today is pretty positive about getting older. So when we talk about age shame or age apartheid, is that a term that old people give themselves, or is it something that is thrust upon them in King Lear fashion? Sergei, what do you reckon?
Well, I think that old people, it's not the creation of old people. That's my view. I think that's just being put on people.
Okay, so Elizabeth, it comes from outside. It is something that is thrust upon old people unfairly, as we might deem it to be here. But why? Why do you think?
I think because that is the prevailing opinion that, again, what was it Marie said, that we do not want to be done unto. And it's traditionally people have thought about elders, except for native populations, that elders have to be cared for. And so it has been thrust upon them, but like anybody who's trying to maintain their confidence and their self-esteem, you can wear people down by shaming them like that and continually shaming them. So it is something that becomes a bias that's accepted across the board. And it's take the advertising and the marketing business, for example, and 95% of the economy in buying products and services today is with the over 60 population. Yet 5% of the ads are directed towards the over 60 population. And
Maybe
that is
they've got enough
because
sense not to pay attention to the ads, and the promoters know this. Can I ask you a question, Sergei? In your study of the world's aging population, have you been surprised by anything in particular?
Well, again, so I'm extremely surprised by this notion of who is old. People are living 20 years more on average, and we still consider people old at age 65, sometimes age 60. So that is actually which induced us, to start researching this field.
Yeah. I was mentioning that report earlier by the United for All Ages group, Together in the 2020s. It suggests there needs to be societal change and government change. What would you say our authorities in this country and indeed across Europe perhaps need to do to end this shaming, to end this idea that the old are useless?
I think it needs to start with older people. Going back to the discussion with Elizabeth earlier, there's evidence that older people internalize the negative stereotypes of old age that are prevalent in our society. There's actual research from the States now that I found recently, which indicates that subliminally absorbing negative stereotypes that exist all around them about old age actually affects people's physical health negatively.
But if you're feeling a little bit older, if you're feeling a little bit run down, a bit creaky, a bit crumbly, more than you did in your 20s, that is inevitable, isn't it? How do you convince yourself to say, actually, I'm younger, I'm better, I'm brighter, I'm better than I was in my 40s? How can you do that?
Well, I look back to my mother, my grandmother. I had opportunities, choices, and a career that they were denied. And it's a huge difference in my life compared with them. But in terms of government and the prevailing mentality, mindset in a society, I think older people have to fight it. I mean, the history of the disabled rights movement, which was very strong in the States and came over here, nothing about us without us, and fighting every inch of the way to make sure that societal barriers to their mobility were removed. I think that sort of politics has to be absorbed more by older people. They have to fight for change of the mindset that is in such a cultural lag and get governments to change.
Militancy. What do you reckon in terms of the way we're going? Will there be no old people's homes in 50 years, 100 years' time?
I think sooner, because I'm quite glad to see the movements from the funders, especially for research projects. We recognize, all the researchers recognize the needs are changing when we getting older. So it is all about, I think, designing maybe different solutions tailored to the specific and real needs of the aging population. So what may add into the picture is the funding for cross-disciplinary research, because I think it's critical to bring all the stakeholders into the same room, including the community as well, but having someone from social sciences, having someone from health and medical sciences, having from engineering sciences, because we would like to implement our ideas into real practice. And if there is research and funding for cross-disciplinary manner, then it will make a big difference.
Fantastic. Sergei and Elizabeth, one question for each one of you as we come towards the end of the programme. Sergei, you first. What if somebody came to you and said, look, Sergei, it's about time we got somebody a bit younger to do your job?
Well, I won't mind. I won't mind if someone younger is doing my job, but I want still also to do my job. And you know, just myself thinking about how I did my job earlier and how I do it now. Many things I was probably more efficient when I was, say, 20 years younger. But on the other hand, when I do things now, I can do them I would say, I would do them probably ignoring some minor things, and I would see it from the top. You know, I would still do it very efficient.
Okay, so you can see the problems just as clearly. Elizabeth, are you ever going to retire as such?
No, I certainly hope not. And one of the most surprising things that you asked about earlier, and I have a lot to learn about, is the whole art of learning and how brain grows, how the brain grows and neurons in the brain grow. And recent research talks about the fact that they grow faster based on a predicate of experience. So you can extend your knowledge based on the experience already embedded in the brain. And I find that incredibly exciting, and I want to know more about that. And no, I don't ever plan to retire, and certainly not retire my brain.
Well, that's extraordinary. I think it's been really uplifting to listen to everybody here on this programme. Where are we going to be in 30 years? Do you think you'll have won the battle?
I'll have senior co-housing communities all over the country, in the UK.
You will be of a certain age then, where you get a telegram.
I'll be
from the Queen.
105.
Yeah. So you think progress is being made? It may be a bit
Forget the
slow.
telegram.
It'll probably be a digital message from Her Majesty or Her Majesty's descendants.
His Majesty.
Thank you. Thank you all very, very much indeed. I think it's been fantastic to air this. Appreciate you coming into the studio. Elizabeth, Sergei, thank you for joining us, whatever time of day it happens to be with you. I know you've made a big effort, and Brenda, thank you too for coming in. From me, David Foster, from the Roundtable team, we are mostly, I would say, a young team, but we do make allowances for age in some cases on this programme. I'm glad you continue watching. Goodbye for now.